Yeah, g'day YouTubers. Tinker O'Toole with another video. In today's session, we're going to talk about the USG chart. I can show you many things that are very confusing on the USG chart. And when I first got the USG grinder about 3 years ago, I was very confused by the orientation of the icons that appeared in the second column. And we can go over all the columns, but if you want to know what version of USG chart you've got, look in the top right hand corner. You'll see a whole series of numbers, but it's the last two numbers that I'm interested in. And in the latest USG chart, which is March 25, you'll see the last two digits will say 25. So then you know it came out in 25. Okay, so when we look at the USG chart, there are 9 columns of information from left to right. And if you look at the rows with the little square boxes, there's an upper part and there's a lower part. So the upper part in the square box, the text in the upper part, refers to the angles that you set the grinder to. In the lower part of the box, you'll notice it'll say positive 40. You set the A scale to positive 40, that's for the Raker adjustment. Now first of all, we'll go back and we'll have a look at the first row. The first row is the pitch. And in the first column, 6.35, which is 1/4 inch pico. The next column, 6.35, 1/4 inch standard, 932, 3/8 pico. Then 8.25, which is 0.325 of an inch. 932, which is 3/8 standard. 1026, which is 040 chain. Then you've got four different chains. You've got PMX set at 10 degrees, PMX, and you've got RMX, another 10 degrees. These are for your milling chains. And then you've got RCX, RMX. Then you've got RMH, RMHS. The H stands for harvester chains. Then you go further down the list and you've got your tungsten carbide chains in the various different formats, pitch I should say. And then you've got pico-hexa. Pico-hexa now came out in 3/8 standard. You've got 3/8 low profile, and now you've got 0.325. So that's all your pitches. Doesn't talk about what sort of chain it is, you know, whether it's semi-chisel or full chisel. That's over in the last column. Now, the second column. This is the column that's probably confused a lot of people, because the icon or the icons that you have in that box is 3 icons. You got number 1 icon on the left, number 2 icon on the right, number 3 is on the bottom. Now, number 1 icon is a left-hand tooth. Number 2 is a right-hand tooth. Now the icons have been changed around from various different charts. Why they continually swap them around, I don't know. We can illustrate that with a picture that shows one set of teeth facing towards each other and the other set of teeth facing out. And that's what confused me, because when you look at a left-hand tooth or a right-hand tooth, you view them from the back. So when you look in this column, on the 25, this version, the teeth face in towards each other. On 2021, the teeth faced the other way. So they've been continually going backwards and forwards with the teeth facing in, the teeth facing out. Why, I don't know. I've even seen column B where it's got -15 / +15. I've seen that in reverse as well. And I've seen column C where it's minus 30, positive 30 in reverse, where it's got, it is unbelievable how they've done that. So those 4 columns, column 2, column 3, column 4, column 5, I've seen them where they've swapped them all around. So the thing to keep in mind is that the second column, the orientation of the teeth. Number 1, and you can go, we'll put another picture up. We'll put a picture up here that's dated around 1991, somewhere around that era. And you'll clearly see it's got right-hand cutter, right? And the right-hand cutter will respond to positive 15 on the B scale. And a left-hand cutter will respond to minus 15 on that sliding vice. So that was the information back then. It really hasn't changed because they weren't using icons back then. They were just using text. So that's what they wrote. Clearly you can see that in the picture. The left cutter, the right cutter, and how it corresponds to the sliding vice. Today, if you look up on the chart, I actually inserted some text next to the icon of the grinder where you see A, B and C, the scales, that little icon there. You look at that text, I've got 1 equals left cutter, 1 equals minus 15 on the B scale. 2 equals the right cutter. 2 equals positive 15 on the B scale. Do that, you can't go wrong. So the A scale is the movable head, and that's the top plate cutting angle. All right? Normally, that will be set at 40 degrees. The B scale, which is a slidable vice, minus 15, positive 15. Minus 15 for a left-hand cutter, positive 15 for a right-hand cutter. That is for all semi-chisel and full chisel chains, excluding hexa and the rapid duro chains and some of the milling chains. But for your standard full chisel chain and semi-chisel chain, you apply that setting. Your top plate angle, still only use minus 30, positive 30. That's it, 30 degree top plate angle. So that's the settings that you need to do for all your RS chain, rapid super and rapid micro, which is semi-chisel. If we go over to the next column, you'll see where I wrote. Now, the other thing is, I've put text in the bottom of those boxes so that it's clearly, which should have been done in the first place. In the first box, I wrote pitch, then raker, then top plate cutting angle, sliding vice, top plate angle. All along there, I wrote that text. I added it all in. Should have been there in the first place. Okay, so wheel code. If you look at the top of that box, that code represents the pitch, the wheel to use for the pitch. So you can go down any one of those pitches, and if you were to take the first pitch, which is 6.35 of an inch, which is 1/4 inch pico, the code is 52037507017. Radius equals 1.7 millimeters, right? The bottom in that box refers to the raker. And if you have a look, you got 40 degrees on the A scale. You set that to 40 degrees. You set the vice to 0. You set your C scale to 0. You change your wheel to 52037507015. And that is your raker wheel. And you should have an angle. You should have ground an angle on the wheel at 30 degrees. That's if you want to dress the rakers. So that information's in there. Always remember that the top of the box has got to do with the cutting angles. The bottom of the box has got to do with the maintenance, the raker, which is number 3. And number 1 and 2 are the angles, Number 3 is the raker angles. The raker angles are all the same unless you get into, the other thing is if you get into rapid duro or some of the others where you may have a different setting, right? Now, hang on, let me just have a look. The only one that comes to mind, raker setting, sorry, I'm just looking at the chart. They're all 40 degrees. So you set the raker angle at 40 degrees. It doesn't change even for the rapid duro or anything else. Rakers, yeah, it's all set at 40. Okay, so we go over into the next column. You'll see radius written on the bottom. There's two main icons there. The one on the left is the radius of the wheel, and you can see that if we go to the 1/4 inch pico, it has a radius of 1.7. Underneath, it's got A equals 30 degrees. That's the angle of the wheel. So that's pretty straightforward. The next column deals with the raker height for the different types of chain or pitch. And if you look at the 635, the 1/4 inch pico, the raker height is 0.45 of a millimetre, whereas you go to standard 3/8, it's 0.65 of a millimetre. In the last row, you'll see a picture of a tooth and you'll see an angle. That is a side plate angle. If you go down the list, if you actually have a look at the first one, which is a 6.35, the 1/4 inch pico, it's got a 75 degree side plate angle. However, if you go down the next 4, you'll see that the semi-chisel has 75 degrees on the side plate and 60 degrees on the full chisel. Full chisel is designated as RS, Rapid Super, and semi-chisel is designated as Rapid Micro, or in the smaller chains, Pico Super and Pico Micro in your 1/4 inch or 3/8 load profile. So that is all your 9 columns with the information that's in there. So what I can do is actually show you the difference between confusion, how easy it is to be confused. We'll just put the picture of the 2 teeth up before that we had, where the tooth face inwards, and in the other versions they face outwards. And if you look down the bottom of that picture, you'll see the codes, the last 2 codes, at what year that was put out. And there's many others out there. There's another version, and we can pop that up. It's called K08. That's the last 3 digits. K08 will refer that it came out in 2008. And that icons face inwards. And we'll just look at that scale, and you can look at the scale and you can see how the information is continually changing between the teeth facing each other. The sliding vice -15, +15 is changing on one side to the other side. Over the years, it's changed backwards and forwards, where it puts +15 first. So that's bad in itself. The top plate cutting angle doesn't matter. It's 30 degrees left or right, or minus or positive. So it doesn't matter if you reverse them backwards, because 30 degrees is 30 degrees. But certainly on that B scale, swapping the vice around between the positive and negative and putting them, changing them around and changing around the A scale is certainly confusing. Because if you go back when the USG grinder first came out, which was in 1972, nothing has changed on the A scale, the B scale, or the C scale. It is exactly identical as what it was in 1972 as what it is today. The only thing that they've been playing around with is the bloody icons and the orientation of them. And that's making it really confusing. But what you must remember, irrespective of what chart that you look at, number 1, which is on the left-hand side, has always been, when they went to icons, number 1 has always been a left-hand tooth. Number 2 is always a right-hand tooth. And number 3 is the raker. That has never changed on any of the icons. The only thing that's changed is the tooth facing inwards or outwards. I think the reason that they've done that is to illustrate that's the column. And it can be confusing. There's nothing wrong with changing the angle. Like an example is if you look at the chart back in 1991, around that era, they had Topic Super, which was a little bit like a lower profile. They were using 48 degrees. They were using different angles. That's okay. Different angles are all right. That doesn't confuse me. What does confuse me is the orientation on the chart, that you've got them facing in towards each other, you've got them facing out towards each other, then you change the vice angles left and right, and you change the top plate left and right. But changing the top plate left and right, or positive and minus, doesn't make any difference because it's still same as the 30 degrees. Now, just to talk briefly about the USG grinder and the angles. Still only use 40 degrees for the top plate cutting angle, all right, the A scale. Only time they deviate from 40 degrees when they use their rapid gyro, their harvester chains, or hexa, all right? So that one you could virtually lock in 40 degrees and not forget about, and just forget about it, unless you're using those other chains. The B scale, it uses minus 15, right, for a left-hand tooth, positive 15 for a right-hand tooth, right? That doesn't change unless you get down into the rapid gyro or you get down in the hexa. So that's the same for semi-chisel, full chisel. The other thing that doesn't change on the C scale, which is a top plate angle, 30 degrees, that doesn't change unless you get down to the milling chains or you get down to the rapid gyro or you get down the hexa. So for your semi-chisel, full chisel, it's 40 degrees, minus 15, positive 15 on the vice, and on the C scale it's 30 degrees. That does not change. Raker height is critical, so make sure you get that right. I think I've covered that chart pretty good. And I do remember on some of the forums, because when people are confused, as what I was when I first got my USG grinder, I remember getting on one of the forums and this guy was talking about the USG chart. And like myself and many other people out there, we were all confused, especially with the way that the icons are. And if you have a look at the chart, I've modified it with some text. And especially up there where the grinder is, you'll see A, B, and C, that little icon. And right next to that to the right, I wrote 1 equals left cutter, 1 equals minus 15 B scale, 2 equals right cutter, 2 equals positive 15 on the B scale. So by writing that, you can't make a mistake. And then underneath every box in the top row, I wrote pitch, raker, top plate cutting angle, sliding vice, top plate angle, wheel code, radius, raker height, side plate. That text describes what every box is. Even though a lot of it's self-explanatory, I still think it's better that you can't have enough information. The other thing that can be very confusing about a Stihl USG grinder, especially on the A scale, is totally different than an Oregon grinder. Reason being that the Stihl USG grinder, when the grinding wheel is sitting vertical, and that's on 0 degrees on the A scale, they are not using 90 degrees reference point. They are using 0 degrees as their reference point. So the 40 degrees, you'll go 10, 20, 30, 40 to the left. That's 50 degrees on an Oregon. So on an Oregon grinder, you use 90 degrees as your vertical reference point, right? You go 80, 70, 60, 50. You've tilted 40 degrees on the Oregon, and you've tilted 40 degrees on the Stihl. One has 0 degrees reference point, the other has 90 degrees. That's the only part that's different. The slide-in vice is slightly different. So when we look at the sliding vice, the B scale, you can see on the left, it's minus 40, 0 in the middle, and positive 40 on the right side. Now I popped a ruler underneath, and you clearly see that we start here, right, at 0, and where it's positive 40, it's 80 millimeters. So this B scale is in millimeters, not in degrees. So when you see minus 15, positive 15, it refers to a shift of the vice in millimeters, not in degrees. As I said earlier before, the angles really don't change for semi-chisel and full chisel. They're all the same. So that doesn't make it confusing. That actually makes it easier. The only thing that I will say, the last thing, right? A lot of people turn around and talk about the 10 degrees downward tilt. Oregon style grinders recommend a lot of the 10 degrees downward tilt for many chains. Depends where you buy your chain from, whether it's Oregon, whether it's Carlton. Just depends where you buy it from as to whether they recommend the 10 degrees downward tilt or not. Still don't recommend 10 degrees downward tilt. There's nothing in the grinder about it. The vice works totally different. And I'll just explain this. I'm going to use the term offset grinding. And the term offset grinding refers to grinding off the center line of the grinding wheel. Because the moment that you go away from the center line of the grinding wheel, you're grinding up on an angle. If you're grinding right on the bottom of the grinding wheel, then the left side and the right side is equal. As you go up the grinding wheel, the angle changes on the grinding wheel because you're grinding off the center line. The A scale is 3 degrees out, and you can, if you look at the back of your USG grinder, you'll see that 3 degrees offset. So that's 3 degrees out. The B scale, well, there's nothing out about that. That's just standard. The C scale, which looks like a protractor, if you look where that pivots and turns, there's a little pin that goes through the body. That is the pivot point. If you look where the chain sits in the backstop, the front of the tooth is 17 millimeters past that pivot point. So when you have your vice sitting at 0, your B scale at 0, and your C scale sitting at 0, you'll find out that the tooth will line up almost, only be about 2 millimeters offset from the center line because the drive link is right in the middle. So the drive link will be dead in the center of the center line of the grinding wheel. As you turn your C scale to 30 degrees, you'll notice that the tooth moves right up the side of the wheel whether you turn it left or right. And you're grinding right up the side of the wheel by about almost 15 millimeters, right? I think it's about 12. This is why you've got to set your B scale minus 15 and positive 15, because that'll push the tooth back to the center line. Just a couple of millimeters off the center line. That's how they have it set up. No 10 degrees downward tilt. It's all built into the grinder with the offset on the A scale, the offset on the C scale, and setting the offset on the B scale from 0 to minus and positive 15 means that the geometry of the tooth will match that of the factory. And a good example of that is I've had RS chain. I set all the parameters up on the grinder, bring the grinding wheel down. I marked the tooth with texture. I rotated the grinding wheel backwards and forwards to see where it started to scratch, and it started to erase the texture exactly in the right spot. So I can tell you that if you set it up with this current chart, the B25 chart, the left cutter, which is number 1, minus 15 on the B scale. Number 2, the right cutter, positive 15 on the B scale. A scale, 40 degrees. C scale 30 degrees, and that's for all your semi-chisel and full chisel chains. Don't worry about the icons facing in towards each other or facing out towards each other. To me, that was purely just to display an icon to say, hey, this is a left and right tooth. The orientation of it, why they've changed it backwards and forwards is beyond me. It just confused me, and it confused a lot of other people as well. So hopefully this information that I'm presenting now is not confusing. And if you follow what I've said and you follow the chart, there's no problems. You'll grind your teeth, and they'll be nice and sharp, if not sharper than the factory. Only one other thing that I will say about using the Stihl USG grinder is the composition of the wheel. You notice the wheel's got white specks in it. It's got grey specks in it. Not too sure what the black specks are, whether it's a different grade of aluminium oxide or what it is. Definitely run a lot cooler than those pink wheels. Have not burnt or even turned any teeth blue using those grinding wheels. They are excellent. They're much better than the pink wheels, the Oregon style type wheels. Only final one thing that I'll say about grinding, make sure that when you do use your grinder, that you're taking as minimal amount off the tooth as possible. Don't bring the grinding wheel down like you need to tap it on, off, on, off, on. Do it nice and slow and take a very small amount off. You can always take or have a second pass, but if you take too much metal off, you can't put it back on. So take as little as possible until the teeth is ground properly. And the only other word of advice, look for your tooth that's probably the average length and start with that one. Don't start with a tooth that's your smallest tooth, because you'll end up grinding too much off the teeth that are a little bit longer. I hope that information helps. I hope I've presented it so that you can clearly understand what I was saying. Because when I first got the USG grinder, I was confused by those icons. It wasn't clearly written. And I know I wasn't the first person. So hopefully I've presented the information that's clearly understandable. Please subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up at least. Comments are always welcome. So if you're still slightly confused about something that I've mentioned about that USG chart, just put a comment in there and I'll answer that straight away. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.